You see, every 1st of October, my country celebrates independence.
Okay.
But how independent is our independence? Now, let's look at the type of independence that we have.
There's nothing to show.
Now, to start with, Nigeria was not even structured to be a country in the first place.
Hell.
Nigeria was established due to British business interests.
With the big eye.
In fact, this geographical location that we call Nigeria today used to be known as the Slave Coast because it used to be a place where British merchants got their adequate supply of slaves in the 17th century. It was during that period that the famous Igbo landing happened somewhere in Georgia, where a group of Igbo slaves conspired to drown themselves rather than being sold into slavery.
Hell.
But that one is an issue for another day. So by 1870, Britain was the most industrialized country in the world.
You get it?
And their interest shifted from slaves to palm oil because they needed a lot of palm oil as lubricants for their machines.
Continue.
And Nigeria had enough palm oil, especially in the Niger Delta region, down towards the eastern part. So, a man known as George Goldie set up the United African Company, which later became the Royal Niger Company, for the aim of exporting palm oil from Nigeria to Britain. So there was no structure in the palm oil business then. And what this man wanted to do was to create a monopoly in the palm oil business.
Corruption.
So after promising our local chiefs that there was going to be free trade, he now tricked them into signing an agreement that gave the Royal Niger Company the exclusive right to export palm oil.
God will see us.
These leaders were deceived by the promises of free trade, and they signed an agreement that was written in English, which they didn't know what was contained inside.
Hell.
And King Jaja of Opobo was one of the leaders then. So around 1887-88, when Jaja of Opobo wanted to export his own palm oil, he was arrested and charged for obstructing commerce and was sent into exile.
Wickedness.
And while he was returning in 1891, he was poisoned with a cup of tea.
A cup of tea.
Now, the fate of Jaja of Opobo made other local leaders to realize what they were up against.
Yeah, maybe one.
And one of the local leaders then was King Koko of Nembe, who now formed an alliance trying to bring down the Royal Niger Company. He took his soldiers and attacked the headquarters of the Royal Niger Company, which is in today's Bayelsa. He abducted 60 British men and lost 40 of his soldiers. Now, he now gave the Royal Niger Company an ultimatum that they must give him the freedom to export his own palm oil before he can release his hostages. And the Royal Niger Company refused. So he killed 40 of the men in his hostage.
I could have killed a lot.
And as a result, the British Royal Navy attacked the Kingdom of Brass and leveled it. And King Koko went into exile as an outlaw.
Child.
And just like the fate of Okonkwo in Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, he committed suicide in 1898. But because of the negative publicity around the war, that particular war, the Royal Niger Company decided to sell their territory, which is Nigeria, to the British government for £865,000.
What?
And 15 years later, in 1914, Lord Lugard amalgamated the Southern and Northern Protectorate and named it Nigeria.
You get it?
So Nigeria was not just a colony. Nigeria was more like a property.
Holy Ghost fire.
So Britain established their colonial rule while their trade was still going on. Meanwhile, that Royal Niger Company has been absorbed by Unilever, which is still in operation today.
We don't know why it's
So the
going
resources of Nigeria was very important to the British Empire, especially during the World War II. the export of palm oil, granite, cocoa, rubber, and all of that.
No problem.
And in the early 50s, when crude oil was discovered, interest in crude oil replaced the interest in palm oil.
That is not corruption.
And in that same period, the wave of independence has been sweeping across the world, including Africa. And most of British colonies were regaining independence. India got their own in 1948, Ghana in 1957. So the fact that Nigeria was going to get independence became inevitable.
We have to know who we are.
And then the father of African independence was Nnamdi Azikiwe. There was no doubt about it. He inspired a lot of freedom fighters in Africa, including Kwame Nkrumah. His newspaper then, the West African Pilot, which preached the anti-colonial message, was the most influential paper in the 1930s and 40s. In fact, his paper was so influential that a lot of people used it to learn how to read.
You get it?
And because he wanted financial autonomy from Britain, he established the African Continental Bank in 1940 and invited some notable Nigerians like Sir Louis Odumegwu Ojukwu to become a part of the board. And it was Zik of Africa and other individuals like Herbert Macaulay that led the National Congress of Nigerian Citizens, NCNC. And the British were terrified that these people, with their anti-colonial message and their pan-Africanism, if they are to take over power, their interest, their business interest in Nigeria may be in jeopardy. So they gave us the type of independence that suited their interest and not our own.
Photo.
On 1st of October 1960, Nigeria got independence with a British Governor General still in charge of the country.
For what? Why?
His name was James Robertson. It's just like your Oga that you have served for 7 years saying he has settled you, but you are still living inside his boys' quarter. It was now Sir Robertson that conducted our very first election with his allies. And that election was manipulated, and power was handed over to the Northern People's Congress, NPC, who were supposed to take power, dominate the country, and protect British interests.
That is not corruption.
So, a conservative group who played very little part in Nigerians' independence were handed over power.
Hell.
That means the template for election rigging was handed over to us by our colonial masters from the very beginning.
Now are you?
The confidence in genuine democracy was compromised at the birth of the country. So with this colonial manipulation in place, Nigeria became a place for petty squabble, ethnic tension, and corruption. Hey! Elections were manipulated. The national census of 1964 was stage managed. The Western election crisis of 1965, judges and magistrates were now being influenced by political leaders. And the political leaders themselves were just tools to enforce a foreign business interest. Now a part of the country was now set up against other parts.
I don't want peace.
We now inherited a leadership structure with an inbuilt power struggle between the major ethnic groups.
Problems, always.
The British understood our ethnic differences and they used it perfectly. Because you know that when two brothers fight to death, a stranger inherits their father's properties. And this evil that was done to our country, they still found a way to smuggle it into our national anthem that they wrote for us. Even though tribe may differ, they now sarcastically added, "In brotherhood we stand."
It's not lie.
And no wonder we did not stand in that brotherhood for long, because 6 years later the war has broke out. And with the onset of the war, our father, the Nigerian father, the colonial masters, to them it wasn't about whose right is being protected. To them it wasn't about who is right or who is wrong. To them it wasn't about the suffering of the masses. To them it was about keeping the country intact.
Hell.
Irrespective of whose ox is being God. So they started supporting Nigeria. To them, the country must remain intact, even if it has to come at the price of 3 million innocent blood. So they became the highest supporter of the Nigerian forces. Their support was so strong that Nigerian government imposed a blockade on Biafra then, stopping food and other relief materials from getting to the region, and nobody said anything, leading to hunger, starvation, kwashoko, and the rest. The support was so strong that a Red Cross plane that was carrying relief materials to Biafra was shot down, killing everybody on board. The support was so strong that a UK student set himself ablaze to protest what is going on in that part of Nigeria. It was so strong that some British ship workers refused to load any consignments going to Nigeria, protesting that they are using it to kill innocent Biafran babies. It was so bad that our famous boxer D Tiger returned all his medals to the British government in protest of supporting one part of the country to overrun the other part. Then he came back and joined the Biafran army.
To learn a lesson.
And although Biafra got their own support from mainly their African neighbors like Gabon and Ivory Coast, they couldn't keep up with the fight, and the war ended in 1970, and the country remained intact.
Really?
And 54 years later, since after the war, there is nothing to suggest that we are anywhere close to genuine independence.
There's nothing to show for it.
Because you cannot tell me you have independence when foreign forces directly determine what happens to your natural resources. You cannot tell me you have independence when the wealth of your natural resources does not reflect the quality of lives of your citizens. You can't tell me you have independence when the availability of a foreign currency determines the value of yours, determines your commerce, your trade, and the general state of your economy. You can't tell me you have independence when you are rich in natural resources, yet you are indebted to all the major countries and financial institutions in the world. You cannot tell me you have independence. No, there is something wrong with this particular type of independence when the people don't have any confidence in the electoral system. And if we are going to get to the point of independence, then as citizens, we must ask for a total overhaul of the electoral system.
Yes.
We must ask for it, clamor for it, demand for it. An electoral system that is technologically driven without any glitches or loopholes.
You get it?
An electoral system with a coverage of collation activities, where results from polling units are uploaded in real time, where the results we are seeing will be the same that the electoral umpire will announce, where Nigerians that are living abroad will be allowed to vote because they are still a part and parcel of this country.
We have to rise up.
Only when we are able to achieve that, and then we get a leader who has the full backing of the people, we can then send him on an errand to go and find the finest Nigerians everywhere around the world. Let them come and help build this country. Build different sectors according to their area of specialization. Maybe by then, we can build a country that is built on fairness, equity, and respect for the value of human nature. Maybe only then can we have a country where everybody will have a voice and an opportunity to express their God-given potentials. Maybe then we can have a country where the wealth of the nation can reflect the quality of life of the people living inside the nation.
You get it?
But until then, let us keep celebrating Owambe Party every 1st of October.
Man, enjoy your weekend. Hey, Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Wanna put